My name is Clara Sterling. I am 32 years old. Last Sunday, my mother-in-law slid a manila envelope across the dinner table, looked at my husband, and said, "I think you need to see this." She had secretly DNA tested our 3-year-old daughter. She expected the results to destroy my marriage. What she did not expect was that those same results would destroy her. But here is what none of them knew, not my husband, not his sister, not even his father. I had found out about the test 2 weeks before that dinner. And what I did with those 2 weeks changed everything. Before I take you back to the beginning, please take a moment to like and subscribe to their secret stories. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? I love reading those. Now, let me take you back 7 years to the day I first met Miriam Sterling. I was 25. David and I had been dating for 4 months. He brought me to his parents' house on a Saturday in October, and his mother opened the door like she was receiving a deposition. She did not hug me. She shook my hand. Firm grip, eyes already scanning. The first 30 minutes were fine. Roast chicken, small talk. Thomas telling a story about restoring a vintage tractor in the barn. Normal enough. But then Miriam steered the conversation the way she steered everything, quietly, with purpose. "So, Clara, where did you grow up?" I told her. Oak Ridge, a small apartment. My mom was a psychiatric aide. "And your father?" I set my fork down. "I left when I was 6. Miriam nodded slowly. She touched her silver watch clasp. This small, practiced gesture I would see 1,000 times over the next 7 years. She adjusted it once between her thumb and forefinger, then smiled. "That must have been difficult." She said it the way people say interesting when they mean noted. Later in the car, "Said she liked you?" I said, "Did she?" He laughed. I did not. What I noticed that night, and what I filed away without understanding it yet, was how much Miriam needed to know where things came from. Not just me, everything. She asked David about the wine. Where was it made? Who recommended it? She inspected the label before she poured. She was a woman who tracked origins. I did not know then that this quality would one day be turned against my daughter. But I remember thinking, she is someone who keeps score. David and I got married the following June. Small ceremony, 40 guests, a stone chapel overlooking the Maine cliffs. My mother flew in from Colorado. Miriam wore cream, which my maid of honor said was a power move. I did not care. I was marrying a good man. The first year was quiet in the way new marriages often are. We rented a house in Silver Lake, 40 minutes from Miriam and Thomas. Close enough for holidays. Far enough for breathing room. Except Miriam did not believe in breathing room. She showed up unannounced. Tuesdays mostly, sometimes Thursdays, she would walk in through the side door. We had given her a key for emergencies, and she would rearrange whatever was in reach. The kitchen cabinets, the coat closet. Once she reorganized my pantry and left a note, cans by expiration date, easier to find. I thanked her. David said that was just how she was. Nathalie, David's younger sister, visited on weekends. She was 24 then, still living with Miriam, still orbiting her mother like a satellite with no trajectory of its own. Every visit ended the same way. Nathalie would leave, and by that evening, Miriam would call David with commentary about our house, our meals, our plans. I did not say anything. I was new to the family. I was still learning the rules. One night at Christmas Eve dinner, Miriam raised her glass. to David, she said. She looked around the table. Thomas, Natalie, Aunt Irene, Uncle Edward. Then her eyes landed on me for exactly 1 second. David could have had anyone. Anyone. The table laughed. I smiled. Somewhere in my chest, a small, precise instrument made its first measurement. Chloe was born on a Wednesday in March, 2 years into our marriage. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She came out screaming, which the nurse said was a good sign. Her hair was dark, almost black. Miriam held her in the hospital room and said, "She looks just like David did." There was warmth in it. Real warmth. For a moment, I thought, maybe this is the thing that brings us together. That moment lasted about 6 months. At 6 months, Chloe's hair began to change, not all at once. Strand by strand, like autumn arriving. Dark brown lightened to a warm honey. Honey brightened to gold. And by her first birthday, my daughter had a head full of honey, gold curls that caught the light like spun amber. I thought it was beautiful. My mother had the same hair, her grandmother before her. The genetics were not a mystery to me, but Miriam did not see genetics. She saw a problem. "Interesting," she said at Chloe's first birthday party, holding a curl between her fingers the way someone holds a piece of evidence. Honey, gold hair. She looked at David, looked at me, looked back at David. "Where does that come from?" I explained. "Recessive gene, my maternal line. It skips generations sometimes." Miriam smiled the silver watch clasp smile. "HM? Interesting." "Because honey, gold hair does not run in the Sterling family." She said it lightly. "The way you mention a crack in a foundation, not alarming, just factual. Just something that should probably be looked at." Nobody at the party responded, but I heard it, and I knew with the certainty of someone who reads body language for a living that she had been thinking about this for a while. Over the next year, things shifted. It was not dramatic. Nothing Miriam did was ever dramatic at first. She was methodical. She planted seeds the way someone salts a road before a storm, thin, deliberate layers that you do not feel until you lose your footing. The comments about Chloe's hair became routine. Not every visit, but often enough. "She is so unique looking. No one on our side has that coloring. Does your family have any Nordic ancestry? Maybe that explains it." I started keeping count. 14 comments in 6 months. I wrote the dates in a small notebook I kept in my bedside drawer. Professional habit. In my work as a pediatric physical therapist, I documented everything. Behavioral patterns, motor milestones, sensory triggers. Documentation was how I made sense of the world. Natalie amplified the campaign from her own channel. She posted a photo of Chloe on Instagram, honey curls, green overalls, standing in Miriam's garden with the caption, "She is so unique looking. Wonder where she gets it." Smiley face emoji. 1,400 likes. I showed David. He shrugged. Natalie is just being Natalie. The extended family began to look at me differently. Thomas's brother, Edward, avoided eye contact at a summer barbecue. Cousin Julia, who had always been warm, stopped texting. And Aunt Irene, Miriam's older sister, started watching me the way you watch someone you are waiting to catch. None of this was said out loud. That was the point. Miriam was not building a case with words. She was building one with silence. The kind of silence that fills a room with suspicion the way smoke fills a house before anyone sees the fire. I felt it. I just could not prove it yet. The thermos incident happened on a Tuesday in April. David had a site meeting 2 hours north. I had a late shift at the clinic. A 6-year-old named Toby with a congenital nerve issue needed extra session time, and I could not say no. Miriam offered to watch Chloe. I dropped Chloe off at 10 in the morning, packed her bag with snacks, diapers, her favorite stuffed penguin, and the bright yellow insulated thermos she had been using since she was 18 months old. When I picked Chloe up at 6, the thermos was gone. "Oh, that old thing?" Miriam said. I threw it out. It looked worn. It was not worn. I had bought it 3 weeks earlier. I did not push it. I thanked her, loaded Chloe into the car seat, and drove home. But something else caught my eye that afternoon. When I walked through Miriam's kitchen to grab Chloe's jacket from the counter, I saw a small Ziploc bag on the table, the kind you use for snack storage or sterile swabs. Miriam moved fast. She picked it up and tucked it into a drawer before I could read the label. "Just organizing," she said, and on her desk in the hallway, partially visible behind a stack of mail, I saw a manila envelope, thick, sealed, with a return address I could not quite make out. I did not connect any of it that night. The thermos, the Ziploc bag, the envelope. They were puzzle pieces without a picture. I went home, bathed Chloe, read her a story, and fell asleep. But my brain, the part of me trained to notice patterns in children who could not tell me what was wrong, that part of me was already working. At work, I was someone else, not a different person, but a fuller version of the same one. In Miriam's world, I was quiet, careful, always adjusting. At the clinic, I was calm because I chose to be. There is a difference. My patients that spring included Toby. Getting him to hold a spoon was a project measured in millimeters and months. I sat with him 3 times a week, guiding his fingers, adjusting the grip, waiting. Some sessions he cried, some sessions he laughed. Most sessions he just stared at the spoon like it was a mountain he was not sure he could climb. One Thursday, he scooped a piece of fruit, lopsided, shaky, barely holding, but he did it. His mother cried in the hallway. I cried in the supply closet after my shift. My supervisor, Dr. Keller, pulled me aside the following week. "Clara, you are the calmest person in a crisis I have ever met. I made 75 hours in a year, not rich, not struggling, enough to cover my student loans, contribute to Chloe's college fund, and pay for the occasional dinner David and I still managed to have alone." I mention this because later, when Miriam tried to frame me as someone who married David for financial security, it mattered that I had built my own life before he was in it. I paid my way through grad school. I earned my license. I chose this work because holding a child's hand while they learn to do something they were told they could not do is the closest thing I know to prayer. Miriam never asked about my work. Not once in 7 years. Mother's Day lunch was the first time Miriam said it in front of everyone. We were at her house, full table. Thomas, Natalie, Irene, Edward, Julia. Chloe had just run into the dining room in her yellow dress, honey curls bouncing, and Julia said, "Oh my God, she is adorable." Miriam set her wine glass down. "She really does not look like any Sterling I have ever seen." She paused. Let the silence do its work. Not one. Natalie, right on cue. "Mom is right." I looked at old family photos. No golden curls. I felt the table turn. Not dramatically. No one gasp. But the air changed the way air changes before weather. Thomas cleared his throat. Irene studied her salad. I looked at David. He was looking at his plate. He said nothing. The lunch continued. Chloe ate her strawberries. Miriam served dessert. Natalie complimented the cake. The wound was delivered and papered over in the same breath. In the car on the way home, I said, "If your mother says that one more time in front of your family, I will respond." David's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "She won't. I will talk to her. When? Soon. That is what you said after Christmas." He did not answer. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Chloe slept in the back, her golden curls pressed against the car seat fabric. He never talked to her. I knew he would not. David avoided conflict the way some people avoid highways, not because they were afraid, but because they had learned early that the fastest route was also the one with the most collisions. But I was done waiting for him to merge. 3 weeks after Mother's Day, my phone rang at work. I was between patients, sitting in the therapy room, cleaning rubber grips from a sensory kit. The number was local. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Remesis. Sterling, this is Rachel from Apex Genomics. I am calling to confirm that we have received a sample for analysis under your daughter's name, Chloe Sterling, age 3. I set the grip down. I did not submit a sample. The submission was made under the name Miriam Sterling. She listed herself as the child's grandmother. However, our policy requires parental consent for testing on minors. I asked her to repeat that. She did. We have placed the test on hold pending your authorization. Would you like to proceed or cancel? Cancel. My hands were shaking when I hung up, but my voice had not cracked. It never does when it matters. Something I learned from my mother, who delivered difficult news to families about their children's development for 28 years and never once raised her voice. I sat in the therapy room for 4 minutes. I stared at the wall chart of hand muscles. I let the clinical names ground me. Then I picked up my phone and called a family attorney. Let me pause here, because what I did in the 14 days between that phone call and that Sunday dinner is the reason I am standing where I am today. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button for their secret stories. I promise you it is worth staying. I called a lawyer that same afternoon. Her name was Martha Reynolds, and she told me something that changed the way I understood everything. Martha Reynolds practiced family law out of a small office in Portland. She had 14 years of experience and a reputation for being direct. I told her everything. The comments, the yellow thermos, the phone call from Apex Genomics. She listened without interrupting, which in my line of work is the hallmark of someone who is actually paying attention. When I finished, she leaned back. Under Maine law, a grandparent cannot authorize genetic testing on a minor child without the express consent of a parent or legal guardian. Full stop. So what she did is illegal. It is a violation of your daughter's privacy rights and potentially actionable in civil court. It also violates the testing company's terms of service, which could expose them as well. She paused. Did she forge your signature on the consent form? I don't know. We will find out, Martha said, making a note. In the meantime, do not confront her. Do not tell your husband yet. I looked at her. Why not? Because if you tell David, he will call his mother. She will cry, apologize, and ask him to keep it in the family. The pattern will repeat. If you want this to stop, really stop, you need to let her play her hand. I paid the consultation fee, $400. It was the best money I have ever spent. Walking out of Martha's office, I called Apex Genomics back. I asked them to confirm the sample had been canceled and to flag any future submissions involving Chloe Sterling without my written authorization. Then I drove to pick up Chloe from daycare. She ran to me at the door, arms up, golden curls bouncing everywhere. I held her and thought, nobody is taking anything from us. That night, after Chloe went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I searched DNA testing consent laws in our state. The results confirmed what Martha had told me. Parental consent was non-negotiable. A grandparent had no legal standing. I searched at home DNA test kits. No parental consent required. This was where it got more complicated. Clinical labs like Apex had strict consent protocols. That was why they called me. But consumer platforms, the ones that advertise ancestry and family connections, had consent checkboxes that were easy to click. I am the parent or legal guardian. Submit done. Miriam had used Apex for what I assumed was a paternity style test. But had she also used a consumer platform? I opened Miriam's Facebook page. She rarely posted, but Natalie tagged her in things. Family dinners, photos of Chloe. I scrolled back. In February, Natalie had shared an article titled, "What Your DNA Says About Your Family: The Surprising Connections That At-Home Tests Reveal." Miriam had commented, "Very interesting." I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder on my desktop labeled Documentation, Professional Habit. Then I opened my bedside notebook, the one where I had been logging Miriam's comments about Chloe's hair. 14 entries in 6 months. I added a 15th. April 14th, Apex Genomics confirmed sample submitted under Miriam Sterling's name without parental consent. I closed the notebook. I looked at the bedroom door. David was already asleep. I wanted to wake him. I wanted to show him everything. But Martha's words kept circling, "Let her play her hand." So I turned off the lamp and I waited. The hardest part was not the waiting. It was carrying the knowledge alone. For the next 3 days, I moved through my life as if nothing had changed. I went to work. I treated patients. I came home and cooked dinner and gave Chloe her bath and read her the same book about the busy caterpillar she had requested every night for 2 months. David noticed nothing, and I do not blame him for that. He was managing 3 construction sites that month. He came home exhausted. He kissed Chloe on the forehead. He kissed me on the mouth. He fell asleep by 9:30. One night, Chloe crawled between us. She does that. 2 in the morning, bare feet padding down the hall, climbing in like a small negotiator at a summit. She curled into David's side, her honey, gold curls fanned across the pillow. I watched them in the glow of the nightlight, my husband and my daughter. His jaw, her curls, his steady breathing, her small fist gripping his shirt. I thought about my mother. She had raised 3 children on a psychiatric aid's salary after my father walked out. No family money, no backup plan. She did it by documenting everything. Insurance claims, school forms, budgets scratched on the backs of envelopes. She taught me that information is not power. Knowing when to use it is. At work, I helped a 6-year-old girl practice gripping a spoon. She dropped it 11 times. On the 12th, she held it long enough to bring it to her mouth. She looked at me and smiled. "Good," I said. "Some things cannot be rushed. You prepare, you position, you wait for the moment when the grip holds." I was not ready yet, but I was getting close. On day 5, I got lucky. I drove to Miriam's house to pick up a pair of Chloe's rain boots. She had left there the previous weekend. Miriam was out. Hair appointment, Natalie said when she opened the door. Natalie was in the living room, phone propped against a stack of books, FaceTiming someone. I walked past her toward the mudroom pantry where Chloe's boots were. The house was quiet except for Natalie's voice, which carried the way it always did, louder than necessary, as if the world needed to hear her participation in it. Mom has the results. She is doing it at Sunday dinner in front of everyone. I stopped. My hand was on Chloe's left rain boot. She has been planning it for weeks. She says once David sees the proof, he won't be able to ignore it. The voice on the other end said something I could not hear. Natalie laughed. I know, right? It is going to be insane. I picked up the boots, walked back through the living room. Natalie saw me, killed the call fast. Oh, hey. Just chatting with a fry, smiled. No worries? Just grabbing Chloe's boots. Cool. Tell David I said hi. Will do. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, set the boots on the passenger seat, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and pressed until my knuckles turned white. Now I knew 3 things. When Sunday? Where? The dinner table. Who would be watching everyone? Miriam had built a stage. She had cast the audience. She had rehearsed the lines. And she believed, fully, absolutely believed, that the results would say what she wanted them to say. I started the car. I was not going to stop her. I was going to let her light the match. The fire would find its own way back. On day 7, I found Christian. Not intentionally, not at first. I was trying to understand how Miriam's DNA submission worked on the consumer platform, the one she had used alongside the clinical lab. I created my own account on the same service, submitted my own sample, and spent an evening reading about how familial matching algorithms function. Here is what I learned. When you submit DNA to one of these platforms, the system does not just test paternity. It scans the entire database for genetic relatives, siblings, cousins, second cousins. Anyone who shares enough markers with your sample gets flagged as a potential relative. Miriam had submitted Chloe's DNA. That meant Chloe's profile was now cross-referenced with every other profile in the system. I logged into the account Miriam had created. She had used an email I found through a password reset trick Natalie had once mentioned in passing. The password was Chloe's birthday. Of course it was. And there, under potential relatives on Chloe's profile, was a name I had never seen. Christian B. age 36. Denver, Colorado. Relationship estimate half uncle or equivalent. I stared at the screen. Half uncle meant one thing. Christian shared a biological parent with either David or with me. Since I was not biologically connected to the platform's test, only Chloe was, the match had to be on David's side, which meant either Thomas had a secret son or Miriam did. I took a screenshot, saved it to the documentation folder, and emailed it to Martha. The next morning, Martha called. If this match is accurate, it means someone in the Sterling bloodline has a biological connection to this man that they have not disclosed, or that Miriam has a biological connection. I said. She submitted the test. Martha was quiet for a moment. Then we need to find out who Christian B. is. Christian James Beck, born June 1988, Dover, Delaware. Adopted at birth through a private agency. It took me 2 evenings to find this. The DNA platform had limited public information, but Christian had opted into the open to contact feature. His profile said adopted. looking for biological family, open to conversation. I did not contact him. That was not my right. But I did the math. Born 1988, Miriam was 24. She and Thomas married in 1990 when she was 26. David was born in 1990 as well. Miriam had a child 2 years before she married Thomas. She gave that child up for adoption, and she never told anyone, except, possibly, the one person who had been sitting at every family dinner watching me with careful eyes on Irene. Because when I looked at Christian's DNA match report more carefully, I noticed something. The platform listed shared matches, other profiles that both Christian and Chloe connected to. One of them was tagged Irene E., possible aunt or half-aunt. Irene's middle name was Elizabeth. Irene Elizabeth. Irene knew. She had known for 38 years. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about Miriam, not with anger, not yet. I thought about a 24-year-old woman, unmarried, probably scared, making a decision that would follow her for the rest of her life. I understood that kind of fear. I had grown up watching my mother make difficult choices. But understanding a choice and forgiving the lie that follows it are not the same thing. Miriam had not just given up a child. She had buried the truth so deep that she convinced herself the only threat to her family's bloodline was me. She was afraid of being found out, and she turned that fear into a weapon aimed at my daughter. Thursday, Miriam called. Big family dinner this Sunday. I want everyone there. I told Thomas to invite Edward. Her voice was bright, too bright. The kind of brightness that comes from rehearsal. We will be there, I said. Friday, I printed the screenshots. I organized my documentation folder, dates, events, evidence, lab confirmation, platform, login records, the familial match report for Christian B. I backed everything up to my cloud drive and emailed copies to Martha. Martha said, Clara, if she does it, if she presents the test publicly, that strengthens your position in any civil action. You have witnesses. I know. Are you sure you want to go through with this? You could confront her privately. I am sure. Saturday night, I gave Chloe her bath. She sat in the tub, splashing, her golden curls slicked wet and dark against her neck. I shampooed her hair gently, working the lather through the tangles. Mommy, why does Grandma Miriam always touch my hair? I paused, my 3-year-old already noticing. Because your hair is beautiful. Eyes at magic hair. I smiled. The most magic. I dried her, dressed her in pajamas, read her the Caterpillar book. She fell asleep holding my thumb. David came upstairs. Mom seems really excited about Sunday. Wonder what is up? I looked at him, my husband face, tired eyes. A good man who had spent his entire life believing his mother was who she said she was. I guess we will find out, I said. I lay in bed that night and did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling and ran through every scenario. In every version, the truth came out. The only variable was how much it would cost. Sunday morning, I dressed carefully. Ivory sweater, soft, not sharp. Dark jeans. The small gold necklace David gave me on our first anniversary. No war paint, no armor. Just me. Chloe wore a blue dress with white flowers. She spun twice in the hallway mirror before I caught her. David loaded the car. 40 minutes north. Classic rock on the radio. Chloe fell asleep before we hit the highway. I watched David's hands on the steering wheel. Strong hands, capable hands. He built structures for a living, things designed to hold weight, and I thought today those hands would either hold mine or let go. We pulled into Miriam's driveway at 4:15. 3 cars were already there. Thomas's truck, Natalie's sedan, a silver Bic I recognized as Irene's. Full house. Miriam met us at the door. She hugged David long, firm. The kind of hug mothers give when they are about to do something they believe is righteous. She nodded at me, brief, efficient. "Put Chloe down upstairs," she said. "She can nap in the guest room." I carried Chloe up, laid her on the bed, pulled a blanket over her legs, her golden curls fanned across the white pillow. Back downstairs, the family was assembled. Thomas in his usual chair by the window, Edward beside him, Natalie on the couch, phone in hand, leg bouncing, Julia setting out napkins, Irene standing by the china cabinet, arms crossed, mouth tight. And on the hallway table, right where I had seen it 2 weeks ago, the manila envelope, thick, sealed, waiting. Miriam caught me looking at it. She smiled, the silver clasp smile. "Dinner first," she said. The herb-crusted pork loin was good. I will give Miriam that. She had always been an excellent cook, one of the few things about her that was not a performance. Thomas told a story about a construction job. Edward laughed. Julia complimented the seasoning. Normal sounds, normal dinner, but I was watching the currents beneath the surface. Natalie checked her phone every 30 seconds. Not texting, just checking the time. She was on a clock. Irene held her fork the way some people hold the railing on a bridge. Tight grip, eyes straight ahead. She ate almost nothing. Miriam sat at the head of the table. She smiled at everyone. She asked about Edward's new truck. She refilled Thomas's water. She was performing calm the way an actress performs grief, technically perfect, emotionally hollow. 20 minutes in, the small talk had run its course. Thomas was mid-sentence when Miriam stood up. She smoothed her blouse, tucked a strand of dyed dark hair behind her ear, and cleared her throat. "Before dessert," she said, "there is something I want to share with the family." The table went quiet. Thomas stopped talking. Edward set his fork down. Julia looked at Natalie. Natalie looked at her plate. Irene closed her eyes just for a second, just long enough for me to notice. Miriam walked to the hallway, returned with the manila envelope. She held it the way a prosecutor holds an exhibit, at chest level, label facing out. What happened in the next 3 minutes changed everything, not just for me, but for every person at that table. If you have not subscribed to their secret stories yet, now is the time. Stay with me. Miriam set the envelope on the table, slid it toward David. "Open it." David looked at the envelope, then at his mother. "What is this?" Miriam placed her hands flat on the table. She had rehearsed this. I could tell because her breathing was measured. The same cadence she probably used when delivering disciplinary news at the school where she had spent 30 years as an administrator. "This is a DNA test," she said. "For Chloe." The room contracted. I could feel it, the walls pulling inward, the air thinning. Thomas sat up. "Miriam, what the hell did you do?" Miriam did not look at him. She looked at me. "No offense, dear, but this family deserves the truth." "Mom." David's voice was low. "What truth?" "I had Chloe tested privately because I love this family. Because that child—" She pointed toward the ceiling, toward the room where our daughter slept. "Does not look like a Sterling." Natalie leaned forward. Irene stared at her plate. Miriam's voice rose half a register. She was reaching the part she had practiced most. "I have said it before, and I will say it again. Honey, Gold hair does not run in the Sterling family, and I think David has a right to know whether that child is really his." The sentence landed on the table like a brick through glass. Edward looked at his hands. Julia's mouth opened, then closed. Thomas gripped the armrest of his chair. David stared at the envelope. His hands were steady, but his jaw was working the way it does when he is deciding between silence and something irreversible. "Open it?" Miriam said again. She was smiling. She believed, truly, deeply believed, that the contents of that envelope would prove her right. She was wrong. David picked up the envelope, broke the seal, and pulled out a stack of pages, 5 or 6 sheets printed on lab letterhead. He read the first page in silence. 15 seconds passed, maybe 20. Long enough for Miriam to shift her weight from one foot to the other. Long enough for Natalie to stop breathing. David looked up. He looked at Miriam. "She is mine." Miriam blinked. "What? Probability of paternity 99.99998%. He held up the page. "Chloe is my daughter." The smile on Miriam's face did not fall. It fractured like ice on a windshield. Still in place, but no longer holding. "That cannot be right." "Let me see." She reached for the papers. David pulled them back. "No." "You have done enough?" Natalie murmured. "Maybe the lab made an error." David turned to her. "Shut up, Natalie." Natalie recoiled like she had been slapped. In 34 years, David had never spoken to her like that. The room understood. Something had shifted in him. A door that had been propped open his entire life had just closed. Miriam's hand went to her watch, adjusting the silver clasp. The gesture I had seen at our first dinner together, at Christmas, at Mother's Day, at every moment when Miriam's certainty met resistance and she needed something to hold on to. "There must be a mistake," she said. Her voice was smaller now. "The hair, the coloring, it does not make sense." David set the papers down. He looked at me for the first time since Miriam had stood up. I had been sitting at the far end of the table, still quiet, hands folded in my lap, watching. And now it was my turn to speak. "The results are correct, Miriam." My voice was level, the same voice I use when a parent asks me if their child will ever walk normally. Calm, clear, and carrying more weight than volume. I know because I called the lab 2 weeks ago when they contacted me to verify parental consent. Consent that you never obtained. The room shifted, not a sound, a vibration, the kind you feel in the floor before a train arrives. Thomas leaned forward. "You tested our granddaughter without their permission?" Miriam's chin lifted. "I was protecting this family. Under Maine state law," I said, "a grandparent cannot authorize genetic testing of a minor without written parental consent. Your attorney can explain the specifics if you would like. Mine already has." I said this the way I document a patient's progress notes. Factual, chronological, without adjectives. Miriam's face cycled through 3 colors in as many seconds. Pink to red to white. Her hand dropped from her wrist. "But the lab should not have. The lab followed protocol? You did not." Silence. Natalie pressed her lips together. Edward looked at Thomas. Thomas looked at Miriam with an expression I had never seen him wear. Not anger, not disappointment. Something worse. The look of someone realizing they do not know the person sitting across from them. I let the silence hold. 1 second. 3. Then I said, "But that is not the most interesting thing in those results." Every head turned. David looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Keep reading," I said. Page 4. He flipped past the paternity confirmation, past the methodology page, past the consent disclosure, and he reached the familial match report. David read aloud slowly, the way you read something you do not yet understand. Potential familial match, Christian B., age 36, Denver, Colorado. Relationship, estimate half-uncle to Chloe Sterling. He stopped, looked at the page again, looked at me, looked at Miriam. Half-uncle. That would mean he is either my half-brother or Clara's half-brother. Is not mine, I said. David turned to Miriam. Mom, who is Christian? Miriam's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Her wrist clasp, the one she had been touching all night, hung motionless. Even the nervous gesture had abandoned her. I do not know what that. Aunt Irene's fork hit the plate. She stood up. Miriam, don't. 2 words, and the room understood everything. Edward said, Irene, sit down. Thomas stood slowly. His chair scraped across the hardwood, a sound that cut through the silence like a blade dragged across stone. Miriam, answer the question. Miriam's eyes filled. She looked at Irene. Irene shook her head, a small, desperate no. It was before you, Miriam said. Her voice cracked, not the practice crack of a woman performing vulnerability, but a real crack, the kind that comes from a wall bearing weight for 36 years finally giving way. Before your father, I was 24. I was not ready. You had a child. David's voice was flat. I was young. I was so scared. You had a child, and you never told me. He stood now. 2, you never told Dad. Thomas's hand found the back of his chair. He held it the way you hold something when the ground is no longer steady. 36 years. Thomas's voice was quiet. 4, Miriam. Thomas, please. It was before us. I was so ashamed. You told Irene. He looked at Irene, who was still standing, one hand on the china cabinet. But not me. Thomas. Irene tried. She was scared. Were you scared for 36 years, Miriam? The question landed and stayed. Nobody moved. Miriam cried real tears this time. Not the performative kind she deployed when David forgot to call on Sundays or when Natalie canceled plans. These were the tears of a woman watching a foundation she had built with silence crumble under the weight of her own scheme. For one moment, one small, strange moment, I saw her, not the Miriam who had spent 7 years questioning my daughter's DNA, but the 24-year-old girl who sat in a hospital in Dover and signed papers and walked away from a baby she was not allowed to keep. I understood that girl. My heart ached for her. Then Miriam wiped her eyes, straightened her back, and said, This is Clara's fault. She brought this up to humiliate me. The moment of sympathy evaporated like steam off a window. Gone. David stepped forward. Mom, Clara did not bring up anything. You ordered the DNA test. You planned this dinner. You slid that envelope across the table. He picked up the pages, held them toward her. I think you need to see this. He said it slowly. The same words she had used 20 minutes earlier. Is that not what you said? Well, we saw it. Miriam sat down. Not in her chair. She missed it slightly and caught the edge. Irene reached for her. Miriam pushed her hand away. Natalie was crying, mascara tracking down both cheeks. She looked less like a 29-year-old influencer and more like a child who had just discovered the rules of her world were not what she thought. I did not know about Christian, she said. Mom, you told me Chloe was not David's. You said you had proof. Natalie, she is not. The gold hair? David cut in. Mom, I am the one with the recessive gene. He pulled out his phone, swiped through his photos, found what he was looking for, and held it up for the table to see, an old photograph taken in the early 1980s. A young woman standing in a garden, squinting into the sun. She had honey gold curls. I found this in the attic last year, David said. In a box of old photos you told me were Aunt Irene's. It is you, Mom, age 19 or 20. Edward leaned in. Miriam, is that you? Your hair was golden. Miriam's hand, the one that always found her clasp, hung at her side. She reached up slowly, unclipped her watch, and set it on the table. The silver metal clicked against the wood. I started dyeing it at 19, she said. I always hated it. The honey, gold curls that did not run in the Sterling family had run through Miriam's veins since birth. She had buried them under 40 years of salon appointments and careful maintenance. And then, when her granddaughter was born with the same trait, she did not see inheritance. She saw exposure. Natalie looked at me. I am so sorry, Clara. I did not. I know you did not, Natalie. There was nothing else to say at that table. Thomas picked up his jacket from the back of his chair. He put it on slowly, the way he did everything. Deliberate, measured. I am going for a drive, he said. He did not look at Miriam. David, we are leaving too. He turned to me. Get Chloe. I went upstairs. Chloe was still sleeping, golden curls spread across the white pillow like small amber rivers. I lifted her gently. She stirred, pressed her face into my neck, and settled. I carried her downstairs. The dining room was emptying. Edward had his coat. Julia was at the front door, keys in hand. Irene stood by the china cabinet, frozen, arms wrapped around herself. At the front door, Miriam stepped in front of David. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair, that carefully dyed dark brown, looked suddenly wrong, like a costume. David, please do not leave like this. We can talk. David stopped, looked at her. You did not want to talk, Mom. You wanted to perform. Irene tried. Everyone just needs to calm down. Thomas, already at his truck, called back without turning. Irene, if you say one more word, I am calling my lawyer in the morning. The sentence landed on the porch like a gavel. Irene went silent. Edward passed her without a word. Julia followed, eyes on the ground. I carried Chloe to the car. David opened the door. I buckled her into the car seat. She murmured something about her stuffed penguin. I handed it to her. She grabbed it with both hands and went back to sleep. The house behind us. Miriam's house. The house she had ruled for 30 years. Emptied one person at a time. The dinner she planned to expose me had emptied her own home. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Chloe slept in the back. The highway was empty. Sunday evening, most people were already home. Streetlights passed overhead in slow rhythm, casting amber bands across the dashboard. David spoke first. How long did you know about the test? 2 weeks. About Christian, 8 days. Why did you not tell me? I had practiced this answer, not in words, but in logic. I knew the shape of it before I knew the sentences. Because I needed you to see it for yourself. If I had told you privately, you would have called her. She would have cried and apologized and asked you to keep it in the family, and nothing would have changed. He gripped the steering wheel, released, and gripped again. You are saying I would have let her off the hook. I am saying the pattern was 34 years old. I could not break it with a conversation. You needed to see her perform. He was quiet for a mile. Then she dyed her hair for 40 years. Honey gold was hers all along. Another mile? I have a brother. A half-brother in Denver. Christian. He said the name like he was tasting it, testing its weight. I watched him. His profile against the passing lights. The jaw that Chloe had inherited. The shoulders that carried more than construction materials. He was processing. Not shutting down, not deflecting. Processing. He reached across the center console, found my hand, and held it. He did not let go until we pulled into our driveway. He turned off the engine, sat for a moment, and looked at me. "Thank you," he said, "for not protecting me from this." I squeezed his hand. That is not what partners do. Monday, David called Miriam. "I need time. Do not contact Clara or Chloe." Miriam, panicky. "For how long?" "David, until I am ready." He hung up, poured coffee, and went to work. That was David. Process by doing. Tuesday, Thomas called. He was staying at Edward's house. "Told your mother I need space to think," he said. His voice was even, no tremor, no crack. An electrician's steadiness. 34 years of marriage. That is a lot of wire to trace back. Wednesday, Natalie texted me 3 words. "I am sorry." Then a longer message. I should have questioned Mom instead of believing her. I was wrong, and I know an apology does not fix it, but I needed to say it. I replied, "Thank you for saying that." Thursday, Martha sent Miriam a formal letter. Cease and desist regarding any unauthorized genetic testing of Chloe Sterling. Notice of potential civil action under Maine privacy statutes. Miriam called David, panic. David told her to read the letter carefully and call a lawyer. Friday evening, David sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He had been quiet all week, not withdrawn, just focused, like he was building something in his head. "I found him," he said. "Christian. He is a high school history teacher. He coaches junior varsity basketball. He has a daughter, 4 years old." He turned the screen toward me. A photo on a school website. Christian Beck, dark hair, same jaw as David. Same slight crook in the nose. He had posted on the DNA platform 3 years ago, looking for his birth mother. On the desk behind us, the manila envelope sat where I had placed it when we got home Sunday night. Unsealed. The document that was meant to destroy us had become the document that rebuilt the truth. David emailed Christian on Saturday morning. He wrote and deleted it 4 times. I watched from the kitchen doorway with my coffee, saying nothing. He needed to find the words himself. The final version was short. "My name is David Sterling. I believe I am your half-brother. My mother was born in Dover, Delaware in 1964. If you are open to talking, I would like that." Christian responded in 2 hours. "I have been looking for her for 7 years. I never expected to hear from a brother." They scheduled a video call for that evening. David set up his laptop at the kitchen table. I took Chloe to the living room to watch her favorite cartoon. At 7:15, I heard David say, "Hi, I am David," and then a voice I did not recognize, deeper than David's, steadier. "Hi, David. I am Christian." I stayed in the living room, but I could hear them, and after 20 minutes, I heard David cry, not the quiet kind, but the kind that comes from deep in the chest, from a place most men spend their lives pretending does not exist. I stood in the kitchen doorway. On the screen, Christian was crying too. Same jaw, same eyes. 36 years apart. And they looked like 2 versions of the same blueprint. "Christian, does she know?" David wiped his face. My birth mother? She knows? Christian said. It did not go well. I do not want to cause problems. I just wanted to know where I came from. Christian, you are not causing problems, David said. You are not the one who lied. Chloe tugged my hand. Mummy, why is Daddy sad? I picked her up. He is not sad, baby. He is meeting someone new. 2 weeks later, Miriam came to our door unannounced. The old pattern. Same side entrance. Same assumption that her presence was always welcome, except now the side door was locked. I had changed the code. She knocked. I opened the front door. She stood on the step in a gray cardigan, eyes rimmed red, looking 10 years older than the woman who had slid an envelope across a table with the confidence of someone who believed she was saving her family. I need to explain, she said. I was young. My parents made me give him up. I carried this guilt for decades. David appeared behind me. Then you should have dealt with it honestly. Instead, you projected it onto my wife and my daughter. I was trying to protect. You were not protecting anyone, Mom. You were protecting your secret. Miriam looked at me. Clara, please. I am asking for a chance. I considered her for a long moment. This woman who had spent 7 years measuring me, cataloging my flaws, salting the ground between me and her family. This woman who had stolen my daughter's DNA. This woman who had planned a public execution at her own dinner table and called it love. Miriam, you are welcome to have a relationship with Chloe. She loves you. We would not take that from her. Hope flickered in her eyes. But it will be on our terms, on our schedule, and you will never be alone with her again. The hope dimmed, but it did not die. She nodded. Those are the terms, I said. She did not argue. For the first time in 7 years, maybe for the first time in her life, Miriam Sterling did not argue. She stepped off the porch, walked to her car, and drove away. Thomas called David on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the dinner. Been at Edward's since that night, he said. First time in my life I have slept under another man's roof. You okay? Dad, I have been seeing a counselor. Do not laugh. I am not laughing. My guy, Dr. Campbell? He says I need to figure out what I can live with and what I cannot. Thomas paused. The line was quiet except for the sound of wind. He was probably outside standing in Edward's yard. I can live with a mistake she made at 24. People make mistakes. Lord knows I have. But I cannot live with 36 years of silence. That is not a mistake. That is a decision made every single day. David did not respond. Sometimes silence is the kindest thing a son can offer. The following Saturday, Thomas drove to our house. He brought a toy train he had carved in Edward's workshop, hand sanded, painted red with wooden wheels that actually turned. For my granddaughter, he said at the door. Chloe saw him from the hallway. She ran. Papa Thomas! He scooped her up, and she pressed her face into his jacket, her golden curls against his plaid shirt. He held her for a long time. Then he looked at David. She looks like your mother did at this age, you know, before your mother started dyeing it. David nodded. I know. Thomas set Chloe down. She rolled the train across the porch, making engine sounds. He watched her with the expression of a man who had just rewired his entire understanding of the past, tracing every connection back to its source, finding shorts and dead ends, and deciding which circuits were still worth keeping. 6 months later, David flew to Denver and met Christian in person. They sat in a diner for 4 hours. 2 men with the same jaw, the same slightly crooked nose. 36 years of distance between them. Christian brought his wife Sarah and their daughter Lily. David brought photos of Chloe. In August, Christian and his family visited Maine. Lily and Chloe played in our backyard, while David and Christian sat on the porch drinking iced tea and watching their daughters chase each other through the sprinkler. I stood at the kitchen window and watched them, 2 brothers finding each other in the middle of their lives. Miriam and Thomas went to couples therapy. Thomas moved back home after 2 months, but he set conditions: honesty, full disclosure, no more locked drawers, no more buried histories. Miriam agreed. She stopped dyeing her hair. It came in silver, gray now, with traces of gold at the temples, the ghost of the girl she had tried to erase. Natalie apologized formally, in writing. She mailed a letter, handwritten 3 pages, to both me and David. It was the most honest thing she had ever produced. The relationship was rebuilding slowly, the way you rebuild anything worth keeping, one honest conversation at a time. Aunt Irene was not invited to Thanksgiving. Nobody discussed it. The absence spoke clearly enough. At work, I helped a 5-year-old girl take her first steps in new leg braces. She grabbed my hands, pushed off, and stood for 3 seconds before sitting back down. Her mother sobbed. I wrote in my notes, patient, stood unsupported for 3 seconds. Progress within expected range. Some things take time, but they come. The manila envelope sits in a drawer in my desk. I never threw it away, not because I need it, but because it reminds me that sometimes the weapon someone builds to destroy you is the same weapon that sets you free. Here is what I know now. The people who try hardest to expose your secrets are usually the ones with the biggest secrets of their own. And the truth, the real truth, does not need a stage or an audience or a manila envelope slid across a dinner table. It just needs time. That is my story. A DNA test, a dinner table, and a secret that was 36 years old. If this reminded you to trust yourself when everyone else doubts you, share this video from their secret stories with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.